Hey, so before we get into the meat and potatoes on the I was about to say vehicle for some reason, on the video, I figured I'd push this out on the front end versus the back end and that kind of stuff, and talk about our class schedule. Now, more stuff is going to be added as we go, because that's just how it works, and I'm going to be planning out till September. I don't have all those dates in place yet, but here's what I have so far. We have the marathon classes coming up next week. So for those of you who have experience with us and want to come out and take those are prerequisite courses, and the only, we know the spiel on that so far, and if you don't know it, you can read on the website. That's coming up next week, 4 days of that. After that, it's the AK class, which has been sold out for months. And then, and that would be March 1st through the 3rd on the AK class. Then we have Drakesboro at the Down Zero range in Kentucky, and we're getting ready to do Pistol 1 and 2, March 22 through 25. And of course, you can sign up for either Pistol 1 or 2. It's the same format throughout. The next thing is we're going to the Southern Institute of Firearms Training. That's out in Brush Creek, Tennessee. And that's April 19th through 20th for Pistol 1. Then we're going to head our way out to Louisiana, and we're going to be doing 2 sets of classes in May. Pistol 1 and 2 will be May 3rd through the 6th, and Rifle 1 and 2 will be the 24th through the 27th. So, guys that live out in Louisiana, we can hit you up then, and that's probably not the last set of classes we're going to do there this year. Following that, we have Pistol 1 and 2 out in Paisley, Florida on the Full Spectrum Warrior range. And that will be, like I probably said already, Pistol 1 and 2, June 15th through the 18th. So for those of you who have no idea what to tell the lady what you want for Father's Day, there you go. And then we have Tulsa, Oklahoma. And that would be Rifle 1, June 22nd through the 23rd. So that's what we have available, and more will be added to it because of how my fiscal year works, Army stuff and that kind of thing. We'll be planning out to September and then basically flipping our whole year again. I might be taking October off again this year, but we'll see what happens, depending on how scheduling works. But let's get on to the video. Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and this is Regular Guy Training. So let's talk about this for a second. The reason for the title of the video is sometimes I think guys get the wrong impression. And here's why. First thing that a lot of people have told me in the past when they come out to class is they've seen the videos and that kind of stuff. They thought I'd be far more serious. They thought I'd be far more stern about everything. Doesn't laugh a whole lot. I was going to be serious the whole time. And then they come out to class, and very similar to the videos, it's like, okay, we're on the block of instruction now. We're going to roll through the whole thing, and it's time to go do work now. And then when we come back, we tell jokes, we cut up, we do, whatever. So, a lot of guys have come to class thinking that sense of humor just isn't there in the first place. As you guys have started to see a little more lightheartedness between like me and Josh and how I interact with my friends or whatever, right? So, there is that. There's that thought process in there that a lot of guys are just misinterpret. And that's not really that big of a deal. It's one of those things where you come out and, you notice, hey, well, this is, okay, cool. He laughs, right? That's the first thing. The second thing, and this one is a little more serious, is that because of the fairly straightforward way that I handle like my reviews, for instance, right? A lot of guys get this impression, and I've been told by students that have come through before, like maybe 2 or 3 or 4 classes later, they come back to me and they tell me, hey, yeah, I figured that as far as the class structure, you're very much, this is how we're going to do it, you're going to do it this way and roll with it, right? Like, this is how it's going to be, blah, blah, blah. And then they'll tell me the rest of that story, and the rest of that story is that it was absolutely untrue. So here's how we train when you guys come out to class and that kind of thing. As far as how we train, I'm very much about your life isn't mine. right? I am not you. So what we get into is, because of, the billion other classes that I've done in the past, or situations that I found myself in, and blah, 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 the first thing that I would talk about is, here's the bottom line. Here's what we need to achieve, right? Now here's a lot of different ways to achieve it. Here is what my personal preference is, but my personal preference doesn't equal something you have to do. Our mentality is very much master what you like, master what is the most effective for your individual lifestyle, and be adept at literally everything else. And if I didn't carry that thought process into my everyday life, I wouldn't be carrying guns right-handed all over the place, right? So there's that portion of the whole thing. How we train is very adaptive to what particular lifestyle that you lead, and that kind of thing. For instance, something as simple as where somebody is going to carry a gun is going to differ between a guy that sits in an office all day versus a guy that does manual labor all day versus a guy that drives for a living, right? And generally speaking, we don't refute people from bringing what it is that they have. I believe that to be wholeheartedly ridiculous, to ban holster types, for instance. Like, show up with your appendix rig. Freaking show up with your Uncle Mike's even. You'll find out that it sucks, right? And when you start figuring out that it's terrible, okay, here's a holster that I have that's right-handed, or whatever hand you are, and, work with that. How does that work for you? And the vast majority of the time, people are just kind of like, where do I buy this thing, right? We believe that you learning things about what you're doing with your life and what you're doing with your individual system, quote unquote, like how you carry your gun, what belt you use, and that kind of thing. And we have these discussions during class, are very much hinge on personal experience. There are certain things that you just need to learn, right, face to face. Now, guys that show up with their Kydex holsters and the latest and greatest and whiz bang and that kind of stuff, generally speaking, they start doing things well, but a lot of times we start having the let's take it back to how guys used to handle this previously type discussion. For instance, right, I made a Facebook post not too long about this, but what comes to mind as something that is fairly fresh in my mind is, and what just happened to me recently, and I'll tell you guys where exactly that ended up, is a guy showed up and he says, on his pistol, he loves the sights that he has for the most part. Okay, for the most part, they're very accurate. It's very clear cut on equal height, equal light. Rear notch wideness is perfect for him. They're a great set of target sights that he can be very precise with. There's a good ledge on the rear sight and that kind of thing. And all that's great. But because it's a blacked out front and rear target sight, he has issues picking up things fairly quickly. Okay, those of you that were keyed up and saw that Facebook post that I made not too far back, this is starting to round into its own little thing. And he was asking me, so what sights should I get to replace these, right? And he starts rattling the list off. And after not too terribly long, I was just kind of like, well, if you like everything about it, why don't we just make the front sight post a little more visible? It's like, what do you mean? And then, so I said, well, for the longest time, guys would do this on their revolvers or on their 1911s and stuff like that. In the past, they would just take nail polish to their front sights. It's more visible. It works good. It works good in conjunction in the dark because you have a blacked out front and rear anyhow. And you're not affecting the tritium. You're not affecting that good aggressive ledge that you like. And it is a 4-second thing that guys used to do way back in the day because the sights were more oriented towards target shooting than being high vis and fast and getting up on people and that kind of stuff, because the emphasis was more on hitting the X rather than hitting the guy. And so that this dude with a latest and greatest and all that stuff, we start bringing in past knowledge that helps augment that, right? So we're very much about that kind of thing. And to tie the loose ends here, I had to remind myself of that exact same thing when I was looking at my Dan Wesson Specialist, for instance. The Heine straight eights on it are great. Only thing is that it's a target set for the most part, where there's a blacked out front and rear and that kind of stuff. And the problem with that, it doesn't show up very good in this light. And the problem with that is that because it's a blacked out front and rear, I have issues picking it up under speed, and I started beginning to solve that problem in the exact same way. I'm thinking I'm going to go to 10-8 or Dawson or something and blah, blah, blah. And then I stopped, remembered that exact situation, and the quote older knowledge, because it is, it's mostly obsolete now because of a lot of modern sighting setups and that kind of thing. But I remembered the older stuff back when I started getting into this, back when the gun industry was a revolving door of technology and new whiz-bang stuff, and applied that fix, and here we are. I brought it out and shot it yesterday, and it was so fast, I was bad for a bit. I had to tailor it down and make sure all my stuff was aligned properly in order to get hits. See what I'm saying? So that's just a tiny example of how we approach a lot of guys. It's what's going on with you. How are you doing things? How can we help augment that? Or if it's required, if you're not able to accomplish what it is that we're asking, and what we're asking is usually a very broad thing. Like if we're trying to get an efficient reload off a pistol or rifle and you can't accomplish it, we then start talking about ways to change things to make that happen, right? And there are guys that show up with a bajillion different body types. A guy that's wiry like me can handle certain body positions. Other guys will have to figure out different ways to do it and that kind of thing because of the specific body type. I've got long and thin fingers. There are things that I can do with long and thin fingers that guys with short stubby fingers can't, and we have to augment that style to that. It's not fixed and that kind of thing. The only thing that is the overall objective. We're trying to get hits on X. We're trying to perform Y task. We're trying to do a specific thing revolving around cover, fixing stoppages, that kind of thing. And usually when it comes into that kind of stuff, we end up running a lot of different techniques to accomplish certain things. And usually what ends up happening is we end up doing a lot of different stuff within a set of reps. So you'll have like 8 reps on a particular thing that we're getting ready to try and do. And the whole time I'm sitting there like, look, pick one that you like, pick one that makes the most sense to you. But during the whole thing, switch it up, do something else, be adept at everything else. Because if, under a certain set of circumstances, and my students that have heard this 1,000 times are probably over it at this point, but under a certain set of circumstances, every technique that's ever been devised is amazing. Under a slightly different set of circumstances, every technique that's ever been made is trash, right? So when we go into those altered circumstances, we have to have at least been there first, because I'd rather you have been exposed to it early rather than way late. See what I'm saying? So there's that. It's very flexible in that way. And with it comes a certain set of confidence. Like the techniques that I teach have been proven to do well with dudes that have used it in the past or whatever the fuck, right? Even if it's little things. Like a lot of things that we teach are the new thing, but realistically they are not. Like just as for instance, the C-clamp on rifles is an old Rhodesian FAL technique that's been around forever. Carrying appendix, as far as pistol is concerned, has been around for hundreds, meaning plural, of years, right? It's not, a lot of this shit isn't new, a lot of it isn't really fancy or hard to comprehend. There's just a lot of different things to consider all at once, and that's how we handle it, right? So it's very open-ended, it's very fighting gym oriented. So let's talk about the fighting gym oriented side of the house. And it's going to factor into our pricing and that kind of thing. Here's how we handle things as far as an individual class and how we develop people is concerned. Number one, when you walk into a fighting gym, the first few days that you're there, you're going to get balled up. A lot of your ignorance is going to be exposed really fast, right? Things that you didn't know and that kind of stuff, right? The only way that you develop and become a solid fighter is to show up over and over and over and over again. Earn those belts, take those licks, discover things that you had to have learned from different people, catch the read, all of that, right? We're very much the same way. So the reason why I have, for a Pistol 1 class, for instance, 1,400 rounds listed is because there's a lot of things we're going to cover, and each thing that we cover, we get a lot of reps in, right? Because you need reps to do well. to turn it into something that you're going to work on, even if you've never worked on it before. A lot of guys will say this, the reps that we did on it, they felt like trash, but I can turn this into something good, and you can start developing it and that kind of stuff. Throughout the whole thing, we're giving you stuff that you can help yourself with as far as dry fire practice is concerned, or go back home and practice X and Y and Z. So there's that. And this works directly into our pricing. Now, a lot of guys have seen our pricing before, and it's low. It's very low. If you're paying full price with us, it's $250 per 2-day class, right? That's not a lot when you compare it to the rest of the industry. Some people would look at this as, oh, well, he's new, and he's dropping the price real hard and that kind of stuff. And in our first year, that was very much the case. It was $200 per 2-day class because we're trying to under-promise, over-deliver, right? But as we work up to $250, that's where it's going to stay for a while until, obviously, I have to work within modern economics and that kind of thing. But as far as that's concerned, that's right where it needs to be. The way I see it is your ammunition cost times 2 is what should be required to take the course, right? Because you also have travel, food, gas, that kind of thing that you have to deal with. And it's very difficult to sit there and pay $1,000 for 4 days in tuition fee, and now I got to come up with ammo, gas, all the stuff that I just mentioned, right? The next thing about that is it's not just to help you to get you out here, okay? Because it is, there's also a selfish reason to this too, okay? Because again, there's that, I tell you, I'm straight up when I have a business practice that I'm putting out in front of you guys. One of the main reasons is we can get you back more often, right? And as far as fighting gyms go, there's no real fighting gym that exists that'll charge you $1,000 per 4 days and expect to develop you heavily, right? So the next thing that we offer to people is the $35 a month program that we're running through Patreon and that kind of stuff. The way that I see it, right? And the way that this works is $35 a month. You come out and you pay $35 a month, and you can come out to as many classes as you want to. It's under a type of system where it's like, if you're that person and you see on the schedule that that we're having a class someplace, you shoot me an email on it because you're different from the guys that are paying full price. You're on our little membership thing now. You shoot me an email, and if there are slots, you're in. And that's just how it works. And you're paying $35 a month for the entire experience. You can come in or out. It's whatever. And the main reason for that is because if I'm functioning even off of $250, I wouldn't have a dozen students at this point that are in double digits with classes with us. As of 2018, I didn't count 2019 yet. You see what I'm saying? And that is how you develop guys. That's how you tweak them down. That's how you can tell how much they've practiced from the last time that you saw them until now. You can see where little issues are starting to come up. You can coach them in a more fine manner than you can the guy that's brand new. See what I'm saying? So there are measures that you take to develop guys. And the only way that you can see those people over and over and over and over again, because let's face it, the rest of us have lives. We have things that we have to pay for. We have things that we have to watch as far as money and that kind of thing. So you have to make it reasonable. And the only way that that works for fighting gyms is gym memberships. And that's essentially how we work at this point, right? Now, again, like I said, this benefits me. For sure. Number one, I have a clientele that regularly sees me. And 2, it's consistent money. It keeps the lights on. That's how it works. So really that's our methodology behind our mindset. We're very much no way is the way kind of people. Now, there are certainly things that you prefer, and there are certainly things that you want to master, and for sure master those, but we need to be adept at literally everything else, right? Coming at it with coming at situations with an open mind and the ability to process a lot of different problems all at once, and just to be able to select a correct manipulation or correct technique based off of the situation you find yourself in is very much where we center our thought process. So, and there, of course, it as far as clientele and pricing and that kind of stuff, the objective is to get you in more so that we can develop you more. Because in my mind, what's more effective? Okay, and you can think about this too. What's more effective? Guys that come in and when they come in, I get this one person once, maybe twice a year, and I get like $1,000 to $2,000 payout. Or I see that guy 10, 12 times a year. I see him all the time, and he's consistently paying money throughout the year. Now, granted, it's basically like a microtransaction, but over time, especially if you work the math, a year's worth of paying $35 a month comes in under paying for 2 of our 2-day classes. The math is determinate, and it's fairly obvious. See what I'm saying? So, and also, more on the gear thing. Look, we're not going to restrict what you bring. Okay? We're not going to restrict a gun that's been built versus a gun that's been bought from the factory, because we've seen major problems out of both. Shit breaks, okay? And we're notorious for breaking equipment because we actually go through the round count that's listed, okay? And in a lot of cases when guys show up, I try to figure out who has the lowest round count. And if it happens to be 2,000, okay, we're just getting a lot of reps. I make sure everybody's cool with it. If everybody's cool with it, it's a 2,000 round class now. We just spend more time on getting individual reps, and we roll it from there. You see what I'm saying? Our playbook is exactly that. What we plan to teach constantly flexes, and there's constantly drills that I'll push in or pull out depending on the group that I have. You know, so it's very much fighting gym oriented. It's very much how do we develop a fighting style around you, and then it's very much how do we get you back here over and over. So it's that simple. If you have any questions or anything like that, I listed a bunch of the class dates that are getting ready to come out already. And remember, a regular guy's firearm is the last defense against tyranny. Be easy.